It would be an understatement to say that this season was a little ominous. It seems like we've been seeing tragedy after tragedy. The season started with James Wiseman tearing his Achilles, then DeJounte Murray, Dame, and to cap it all off, Jayson Tatum. JT, bro. This man was known as one of the most durable players in the league, and he never missed a playoff game until this season. A true man of the people, not missing games so his fans could watch him.
Somebody paid their money to come watch me play. Like, not trying to be arrogant, like it's a bunch of kids in there, my shoes and my jersey, and just because we playing.
This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to Jayson Tatum of all people. This man is a unit. And here's the thing, tearing an Achilles is not an easy thing to do. That is a strong piece of hardware, designed to explode and handle the entire weight of your body. It takes a lot of things to go wrong for an Achilles to tear. Since 1970, only 57 players have torn their Achilles, and yet 30% of them occurred in the last 8 years alone. Somehow, this postseason claimed 2 more. And it's not just Achilles injuries. Our favorite players are missing the most important games of the season at a higher rate than ever. Something fishy is going on here. As mankind reaches for the stars, making breakthroughs in the medical field and sports science, we're seeing our favorite athletes getting injured more? How does this make any sense? So after doing a deep dive into this issue, I've come across 4 main reasons as to why athletes are getting injured more, some of which seem obvious, and some of which you may have never even considered. Starting with number 1. The game is more explosive than ever. Back in the boomer days, when daytime plumbers were hooping at a professional level, the rules were a little different. And these rules, although unintended, protected players from injuries. For one, players had to keep their hand above the ball. Any placement on the side and you get called for a carry. But what does this have to do with injuries? Well, my friend, everything. When a player has to keep their hand above the ball, they tend to play super upright. They're not making slick crossovers, a movement that places a lot of pressure on their tendons, and they weren't coming to complete stops. Deceleration moves would usually require 2 dribbles instead of 1, putting half as much pressure on their legs. Today, we see athletes make the nuttiest of moves. These step backs are filthy, but man are they taxing. These players are moving at insane speeds and then coming to an absolute stop. Think about how much pressure Kemba's leg is dealing with right here. And not too surprisingly, his career was cut short due to leg injuries. But we've seen moves like this since Allen Iverson, so it doesn't tell the full story as to why we have an increase of injuries in the last 8 years alone. What has changed in the last decade is the pace of the game. In the 90s, we'd see a lot of this kind of play, where a post player gets the ball and just kind of hangs around for the majority of the shot clock, and then makes a move. Not only is this not as taxing style of play, but we also see that all the other players are just kind of resting in the background, not really moving around. We really don't see this style of ball anymore. Instead, we get a lot more ball movement, and we're seeing a lot more movement among the role players too, even when they don't have the ball. Since the 3-point revolution initiated by Steph in the mid-2010s, the area of gameplay is a lot larger too. It's not just cramped around the paint, so players have a lot more court to run around with. On top of that, in 2018, the NBA made the wonderful rule change that when a team gets an offensive rebound, the shot clock resets to 14 seconds instead of back to 24. So now teams have 10 fewer seconds to take a shot, leading to more possessions in a game. And the data definitely supports all this, showing that players' total mileage during games are significantly higher in the last 8 years than they were before, with a record high mileage this past season. And on top of running more than ever, players are more athletic than ever. With modern day science and techniques helping athletes, they're now able to train more optimally than ever. And we see that. Players are faster, bigger, and stronger than ever before, but their tendons are not. See, muscle mass and speed have improved tremendously with modern training, but tendons and ligaments haven't evolved at that same pace. It's just human nature that tendons adapt slowly, and this is due to the fact that there are fewer blood vessels running through tendon tissue, so they'll inevitably take longer to get stronger and longer to heal when injured. So when a player's muscle gets super strong and fast, their tendons are under a lot of pressure, and this leads to injuries. And we've seen this in freakish athletes like Zion and Derrick Rose. Number 2, early specialization. There's been a growing trend among young athletes in specializing in one sport early, as in they'll train for a single sport year-round instead of playing multiple sports throughout the seasons. I guess every parent wants their kid to make the league. No soccer, no football, no baseball, no nonsense. Tunnel vision to the rim. And you know what? I get it. Maybe if I started young, I could have made the league. But this starting your kid young attitude really messes them up quite a bit when they're older. And this is a big reason we see a lot of young athletes get injured even before their time comes. See, when a kid's only doing one sport, they're using the same muscles, same joints, same movement patterns over and over again. Their bodies don't get a chance to build that all-around athletic base you get from mixing it up with different sports. So eventually something's gonna snap. Soccer builds footwork and endurance, football builds toughness and explosion, baseball builds rotational strength and coordination. All sports have their benefits, and I'm just throwing around some examples here. But when it's just basketball all year long, they're overcompensating in some areas while undercompensating in others. So now you're actually creating some misalignments in not only your muscles and tendons, but also your neural structures, since you've really only trained your brain to move in specific patterns instead of developing a wider mapping. And this just creates a ticking bomb just waiting to explode. Kids who are trained this way also tend to be trained year-round, leaving small room for recovery, basically fast-tracking themselves to overuse injuries. Pretty bad ones at that. Stress fractures, tendinitis, torn ligaments, you name it. And these are injuries that should not be occurring in young athletes. Young athletes who specialize in a single sport are 70% more likely to suffer an injury during their season compared to those who participate in multiple sports. I feel like a prime example of this is Bronny. Bro's only 20 years old and already has a history of injuries that should only be seen in veterans. He tore his meniscus when he was only 16 and injured it again 2 years later. In his freshman year at USC, he suffered a cardiac arrest, which probably has more to do with an unlucky heart condition than early specialization, but can't discount it completely. And in the NBA, he's already had some games where he's listed as doubtful due to some ankle injuries. As the son of LeBron James, the expectations for him were high from the start, so it's not too far-fetched a theory to think that he only specialized in basketball his entire life. And now we're seeing the consequences of it. On the other hand, LeBron himself was a multi-sport athlete, and even got football scholarships. Russell Westbrook was also a football player, as was Mikal Bridges. Giannis was a big soccer guy in his young days in Greece, and Steph played baseball and golf. All these athletes are quite durable and not really known for their career-ending injuries. Perhaps now we know a reason why. Bringing us to reason number 3, load management. So it turns out, load management doesn't actually help players from preventing injury, and it can actually lead players to getting injured more. Now this might come as a bit of a shock. Huh? Players are playing too much but resting is bad too? Well, yes. And now I think you'll understand the nuance of sports injuries, which makes it really hard for athletes to avoid. But let's elaborate on this point specifically. Playing an NBA game is incredibly intensive on a player's muscles and tendons. Real shocker, I know. But what recent studies have shown is that to really maximize injury prevention is to constantly play at this high level. When your body is used to this level of intensity, it's kind of adapted to it. That's why you often see Ironmen like LeBron, or the entire Knicks starting 5, stay relatively healthy despite logging big minutes. Herein lies the secret as to why so many career-altering injuries occur. It turns out that one of the biggest, if not the biggest drivers of tendon injuries is a sudden spike in workload. Think about it. A player takes time off to rest and recover, maybe rehabs a minor issue or just unloads during the offseason. And then bam, they're thrown right back into full-speed NBA intensity. No build-up, no gradual return, just game speed intensity from the get-go. That's when tendons snap. A 2019 study found out that nearly half of all reported Achilles tears in NBA history occurred within the first 25 games of the season. And that's not a coincidence. It's the exact window where players are transitioning from rest to max intensity, before their bodies had a chance to readapt. It's not necessarily the amount of load that breaks a player down. It's how fast that load ramps up. The safest and most effective way for a player to return to peak performance isn't by flipping a switch. It's by gradually building their way back up. If a player's been out for a few months, they shouldn't be cleared and tossed into a full-speed game like nothing happened. They need a structured ramp-up, ideally taking at least a month to work their body back up to that level. This process should involve several high-intensity sessions per week, simulating game-like movements and demands, with each week pushing a little harder than the last. And when I say a little, I mean a little. No more than a 10% increase in intensity from the prior week. It's a difference between a body that adapts and one that breaks down. You need to give tendons time to recondition so it can tolerate load the way it did before the extended period of rest. Skip this step or rush it, and you're practically begging for an injury. And that brings us to load management. It's basically bringing players back down to a non-game adapted state, and then immediately spiking that load up again. How many times have we seen Kawhi, or Anthony Davis, or Embiid for that matter, come back after taking a significant time off, only to get injured again? I'm telling you, load management is not the move. On top of that, it seems like teams in general are opting for more downtime mid-season, thinking that this extra rest actually helps players heal, but it actually does the opposite. The year after the Lakers won a championship in 2020, they only held 5 practices between the start of the season and the All-Star break. When James Harden was on the Brooklyn Nets, he said, and I quote, "We use the games as practice," indicating that they don't practice at all. Seeing that this is currently trending in the NBA is probably another contributing factor to the increased amount of injuries. And it so happens that load management came about roughly 6 years ago, right when we started seeing the spike in injuries. Number 4, no rest. Let's not get it twisted. Bad load management does not mean no rest is the answer either. Quite the opposite. Just like too much rest followed by a sudden spike in intensity can tear a tendon, too little rest grinds the body down until it breaks. And this is something that's been true throughout the history of the NBA, not just the last 8 years alone. But when you combine it with everything we've already talked about, it becomes more relevant than ever. Overuse is still very real. When players don't give their bodies enough time to fully recover, that wear and tear adds up real fast. In the case of Jayson Tatum, he just came off a championship, meaning that he has a shorter offseason than his colleagues who aren't winners. But on top of that, he played in the Olympics, basically taking away what little time he had off in the first place. And now he's going into the next season without any rest, ready to run it back. And being the legend that he is, he still doesn't take time off to load manage. And while he has my utmost respect for this, it was definitely a contributor to his injury. And this is just my non-professional opinion here, but I really think he was dealing with some Achilles tendonitis before his tear. In the games approaching his injury, he did not look like himself out there. Even when he dropped 40 in that last game, he barely drove the ball. He was just taking fadeaways and threes. And honestly, he was kind of playing like this throughout the playoffs. I haven't seen him really attack the basket at all the way he usually does for weeks prior to his injury. And seeing that he had a really long time before his last extended break, I'm assuming his body was starting to break down a little before it finally gave out. In the case of Kobe Bryant, he actually had an ankle injury a few months before tearing his Achilles, but because the playoffs were coming up and his legendary Mamba mentality, he played through the injury, but ultimately, it cost him. So how does the NBA move forward from all this? Honestly, I think the answer is to shorten the season. Give players more time to rest in the offseason, but also allow them to play at full capacity during the season, so they don't have any reason to load manage. The game asks a lot from its players today, more than it ever has in the past, and we need to respect that. I'm loving the NBA right now. This is honestly the best basketball I've seen in a really long time, but it really sucks to see all these injuries happen. It's all up to Adam Silver to help our players out, so let's hope it happens. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hooligan.